Hey everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Okay, the emoji reacts are already going. We love to see the love. Hey everybody, welcome. We are going to let this massive Zoom space settle into its fullness real quick here. Hello, folks in the chat. People are saying what's up. Arizona, Chicago, Durham, North Carolina. And there goes the chat, folks. You know how it is on one of these mass calls. Or maybe if this is your first one, you haven't seen it before. But the chat goes wild in the beginning. More on that in a second. But real quick, if we want to pop to the next slide, just as folks are settling in here, a quick prompt. If you want to share in the chat one thing that excited you about No King's Day, whether you attended in person or maybe you just heard about it afterwards, something that excited you about that experience, would love to hear it as folks are warming up here. Also, just want to give a note, we do have our captions on. Um, and if you don't see them, look for that closed caption show subtitle button. And otherwise, just go ahead and get some water, settle in. We're going to get started in just a second here. You are at 1 million rising. And hey, and welcome to everybody who's just joined us in the past minute or two. We are so excited to have you all here. Zoom is already maxed out, y'all. We've got 20,000 people in Zoom. And so a lot of y'all are probably seeing us from the YouTube live stream. Maybe you're on the Midas Touch live stream. We're so excited to have so many people dialing in and a lot of enthusiasm and interest in this already. We're maxed out. We're going to get started soon. Carly, if you want to pop back to the last slide, just if you're like, what's this Zoom call I signed up for again tonight? Or what's this live stream I found myself at? You're at 1 million rising, uh, which we'll talk a little bit more about where that title comes from in just a little bit. But yeah, if you want to tell us in the chat as we're settling in here, one thing that excited you about No King's Day, whether you were there in person or maybe you heard about it otherwise. And we'll get started in just a second here. Hey, welcome everybody. If you just dialed in from uh, maybe one of the live streams or another source, or if you're here with us on Zoom, we're so excited to have you all here. We will be getting started in just a moment now. We're going to give it a moment for some of our streaming places to dial in all of the way. Super excited to have everybody. And thanks for hanging with us, everybody, for just another minute here as we dial in some of the technical features of such a massive call. You're at 1 million rising, which is such a series that people are so excited about. That we've maxed out Zoom really early on. We're getting up on a YouTube live stream. We're streaming in a couple of other places as well. And we're just giving a minute for some of those pieces to settle in before we get started here. All right. If folks want to keep saying in the chat, one thing that excited you about the No King's Day experience, that's a little warm up as we're arriving into the space. And thanks for bearing with us, y'all. We're just settling a couple of other technical pieces so that the over 100,000 people who signed up for this series are able to join it and ideally watch the whole thing along with everybody that's on Zoom. So thanks for hanging in for just a moment here. I'm realizing I've been talking at folks in a couple of different ways for a minute now. Haven't even said hello myself. What's up, everybody? My name's Nora. I work at Indivisible. I'll pass the mic to some of our key core facilitators for tonight in just a moment here. I'm just waiting for our cue that we are all the way set up, ready to go. And that we've got access for all of our audiences across all the different spaces on this super maxed out, 130,000 people registered, 20,000 folks maxed out on Zoom. Really exciting call that we've got planned for you all tonight. So thanks for bearing with us. All right. All right, let me just give one more welcome to folks who have joined us over the past few minutes here. Welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. I think we are pretty close to being able to get started here. Just want to make sure our live stream is all the way good to go. And if folks are seeing us on the live stream side, on YouTube, or maybe on Midas Touch, just want to say hello to y'all as well. We're really excited for folks dialing in all the different ways. Oh man, so funny. My chat was just not loading for a while, and now there's like this huge slew of everybody's messages about what was exciting about No Kings that I'm finally seeing. Maybe y'all were seeing that before, but that's pretty cool to yeah to see the love flowing in and the enthusiasm, especially in a time that is so painful and so challenging in a lot of major ways right now. We got to uplift those things that are carrying us forward. Um, okay, I think we're gonna go ahead and keep it moving here. Um, I think we're ready to go to the next slide. Does that work? Great. So just one quick note, folks have already been sharing what excited them about No King's Day in the chat. I do just want to mention one more time, our closed captions are on, but if you're not seeing them and you'd like to, you can look for the closed caption show subtitle button in your control bar. And we're going to get it started with just some housekeeping and some other information about how tonight is going to go. So let's go ahead to the next slide here. Um, just a quick overview of what to expect for the night. So my name's Nora. I'm going to be doing kind of just a quick overview of the big picture, why we're here, what we're going to cover for the rest of the night. I'm going to pass it over to some other folks to cover a bit about authoritarianism 101, what time it is and the moment we find ourselves in, and some aspects of mass defiance that can help us fight right now with a particular focus on strategic non-cooperation. And then at the end, we will talk a little bit about where this goes next and part of our invitation for you all coming out of this, which is to hold community resistance gatherings. More on that in a minute. But real quick, I just want to pass the mic over to the core facilitators you all will be hearing from tonight, starting with Daniel. Daniel, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Hunter. I work with Choose Democracy, and also I'm a freedom trainer.
Okay, and pass it to Maria.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Maria Steffen with the Horizons Project and also a freedom trainer.
And Ash.
What's up? Good evening, good people. It's great to see y'all in the chat. I see some hometown heroes from Tennessee. I'm Ashley Woodard Henderson. My homies call me Ash. I use she, her pronouns, or any said respectfully and in right relationship. And I know many of you from the mass calls, so it's great to be here. And I'm also really, really honored to get to be hanging out with Maria and Daniel and Nora, especially my freedom trainer fans. So looking forward to tonight.
All right. Thank you all so much, folks. They're the ones you really want to hear from. So I'm going to try to move quickly through a next little bit of housekeeping. We can go to the next slide. And thanks everybody for bearing with us with a little bit of a late start as we figure out the live stream pieces. But yeah, just some housekeeping pieces. So first off, this is the first of a three-part series. And you're definitely going to get the most out of the 1 Million Rising experience if you sign up for and attend all three. So we strongly encourage that. I'm going to post a link in the chat right now to sign up for the remaining ones if you have not already. But that's definitely a piece of the puzzle we just want to make sure everybody feels clear on. We are recording this series. Don't worry. We will send it out in the email after with the slides, the resources, all of that. Don't worry. Okay, next, I just want to give a little bit of context and set some expectations for interactivity on these mass call spaces, which maybe some of y'all have been on before. So here's the deal. Now, at this moment, I am turning off the chat. Okay, if you're on Zoom, we're so happy you're here, but the chat is paused right now, and that's largely so that folks can just focus on the space that we're in, focus on what the speakers are offering, the material that's on the slides, all of that. I do just want to give a tiny thing for some folks who are maybe into this. There's an option where you can go on Blue Sky and use the hashtag 1 million rising. Ash sometimes chats with folks there. That's kind of a mass call practice that we've used in some spaces. So that can be a fun thing if folks kind of want to opt in there. But yeah, if you're on one of the streaming places, YouTube, or maybe with the Midas Touch folks, so excited to have those spaces getting filled up soon, especially since Zoom is maxed out. But yeah, the chat will be off for the majority of these spaces throughout. That said, we do want to hear from folks, okay? And actually knowing where folks are at and especially questions that you might have is a really important part of how we're going to make sure that this space is meeting everybody where they're at. So there's going to be a couple of poll questions that help along the way, but also I want to do a quick onboarding to how the Q&A is going to work tonight. So if you're in Zoom, there's a Q&A feature that's turned on where you can ask questions, okay? And specifically, you not only can ask questions, but you can upvote other people's questions, okay? You're gonna see a little thumb, and if you hit the thumbs up, that'll say, hey, I'm interested in this question too, and I wanna see it answered. Now listen, 20,000 people on the call, let alone everybody on streaming, it would be probably like a little, dishonest or dishonorable for us to act like we could actually answer all those questions. And to be real with you all, we're not even going to try to answer all the questions tonight. But what we are going to do is look at all those upvoted questions, the ones that come out at the top of the list, and use those to understand what folks need and make sure we can send out answers to the most common questions afterwards in follow-up materials or on July 30th at part 2 of the 1 Million Rising series. So that's kind of our commitment to you. We do want to know what folks' questions are, make sure we're supporting in a number of different ways. So go ahead, put your questions in the chat, use the upvoting, but also check, like if somebody already asked the same question that you have, just upvote it instead of adding a new one. Also, if you're somebody who's not able to access the Q&A feature, either on Zoom or in one of the streaming places, just put your faith in the 20,000 people otherwise who are on Zoom, who hopefully are going to ask maybe the same question you have, or upvote it so that it can get heard. Okay, I think that is all on the housekeeping front. So yeah, let's go ahead and keep it moving here. Just a couple pieces for me on orientation to this call series. We can go to the next slide. So what's on this slide is a map of the absolutely massive, just like astounding number of events that happened on the No Kings Mobilization Day on June 14th. I just launched a poll, actually. If you were present at No Kings, if you attended that, you're welcome to go ahead and answer that poll if you're on Zoom, just get a sense of where things are at. But yeah, over, I think, 2,100 events, 5 million people in attendance. It was a really, really, really powerful day. And now it's time for us to try to make that message stick. Okay, so if you joined us at No Kings, or if you're on this training series right now, like you're already in this fight, you're already taking action, and that's really huge. But in addition to like pressuring elected leaders, all of that, getting in the streets, we need to pressure other sources of power right now to kind of get off the sidelines and not capitulate. So what that means is we gotta tap on all of our tools in the toolbox right now. That's mass mobilizations included. And also it's just a moment to go in even deeper to a stage where across all different sectors of society, we're defying the rise of authoritarianism in all of the ways that we can and pressuring powerful institutions to do so as well. And not just like the ones that we might be used to pressuring, but maybe some new or unexpected ones as well. Like if anybody comes from a context where calling Congress or maybe knocking doors for the next election cycle, that's part of what you've relied on. It's clear more than ever that that alone is not going to cut it. Let's just say that. So I'll leave it to Daniel, Marie, and Ash to expand on that in a moment. My last thing, we can go to the next slide here. I just want to give a little bit of a preview of what you all can expect from what's going to come tonight and in the series to come. Just how you can plug in and be part of all of this. So first off, I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit because we have an agenda here tonight. We have something that we want you to do after this training, which is that we want you to gather with other people in your life and share these ideas with them. The ideas you're going to get exposed to tonight if you haven't been exposed to them before, okay? And actually, if anybody's feeling like you're all the way in, you don't even need the pitch, you don't even need, all of it, I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat a link to a pledge you can take that you're down to host one of these community gatherings. Don't worry, we'll give you a lot more information soon, but if you're already feeling enthused, that's an option for you. But yeah, over these 3 sessions, we are going to orient all of each other, all of you, to a strategic framework that can shape and strengthen our fight against authoritarianism. We're going to give you the tools and the training that you need to share that with other people in your life. In particular, next time on July 30th, we're going to go through a host guide with all of the resources and materials to host one of these gatherings. If anybody did the Worth Fighting For gatherings back in November after the election, a little bit like that. And then especially in the last session, we're going to offer pathways to plug into existing resistance campaigns. Yeah, largely in that last session. So just want to say, like, stay with us, maybe stretch with us if any of this feels new, unexpected, a little bit different from your approach, or maybe it'll feel like old hat wherever you're at. We're trying to come together around this strategy right now and also build the community resilience that we're going to need to get through this time. So that is enough from me, and I'm going to pass it over to Daniel to take us through the first core section here.
Great. Thank you so very much for having us. It's great to be with all of you. I love the energy. I'm just watching the chat of people sort of going through all the different places and things that people have done and excitement and so forth is such an antidote because what we're feeling, all of us, I'm sure at various levels at various times, it is a incredible amount of tension, anxiety, frustration. I just want to honor all of that actually, because in a way, like the place we're starting here on authoritarianism is kind of we're backing up a little bit. Like, where are we, and what is it that we're up against? And in fact, our bodies, the things that we're feeling, is a place to kind of just start the analysis, which is we are feeling a level of anxiety, of isolation. A lot of us, some of you may be feeling a sense that we've never been here before. Other of you may be feeling we have very much been here before. Others of us are feeling there's some pieces of this that are very unique to where this country has been before. A kind of disorientation. I'm tired. I imagine many of us are also feeling that. And that is all of these things are if you ask anybody who lives under an authoritarian regime anywhere in the globe, they will echo many of those pieces. And so I just want to honor both our inner state to begin with, to both, it's worth preserving. It's part of the authoritarian stream. It's part of the thing that we're up against. And so what we're up against both is inside and also outside. And so I also want to honor the parts of us also that are motivated, ready to fight, energized, willing to be in the struggle, already organizing things, doing stuff. I was so proud of my hometown of Richmond, Indiana, turning out 500 people. I was just there's also beautiful things that are happening amidst this. And so one reason why I believe in us is because we love life. And I believe very much that that is both an attractive quality and also what will enable us to win against authoritarianism. So, whatever version of authoritarianism or whatever that we're in right now, it's like a new thing in terms of the US. And so that means in some ways that we need like a little bit of a new context. And so what we're doing tonight isn't answering every question of exactly what should I do right now. We're kind of stepping back a little bit to the degree you can step back with us and ask yourselves like, where are we? And also starting to look at what are the different tactics and approaches that we need to be using. Because if we just use the tactics and approaches that are sort of first off on top for us, that may be limiting. And so we'll actually need to do some experimentation. So let's go to the next slide. So we could just kind of dig into where we are right now. So we're in what some people call a moment of an authoritarian breakthrough. So what does that mean? That means that authoritarian breakthrough is a window in which a would-be or wannabe king, a would-be authoritarian, is attempting to very quickly, so very rapidly, to consolidate power, to draw power towards them in order to eliminate checks on their own power so that they can operate, that they can get away with whatever they want to get away with. That's the drift. And the reason we talk about this as a window is because there is time around it, that we have a little bit of a window before what's called sort of consolidation, the period in which an authoritarian has actually gotten it. So that on the one hand, there's opportunity and huge risk and danger. So let's go to the next slide and kind of walk through like what is it that an authoritarian wants to do? So what does a wannabe king wants to do? So we'll go through these items. So we'll start with the first item, which is the first thing in the authoritarian playbook is directing investigations against critics. So we've already seen, I mean, you can imagine, as I say these, you can imagine and think of what are some examples that you've seen. There are many happening here. I'm not at all trying to cover them all, but things like the Justice Department firing of staff, opening probes into James Comey and John Brennan. You may have seen Trump's sort of offhanded, capricious threat of Rosie O'Donnell, the threat to deport her. These are all getting away with. I can get away with anything against my critics. Investigating Act Blue, which is I mean, it's a pure partisan thing. Investigating it, so the mechanism of fundraising for the Democratic Party and other folks. So next item. So the next item is giving license to lawbreaking. So pardoning January 6th, that was one of the first earliest out as a signal. It's okay if you're on my team to break laws. Encouraging ICE despite all of its constitutional violations. encouragement for cabinet members to speak dismissively of the courts and to act outside the courts ourselves, just flaunting those kinds of orders from the executive. Next one, regulatory retaliation. So there's a myriad list of this, from examples against free speech in universities to attacking a thriving solar and wind industry, freezing the Cyber Safety Review Board, which and it halted a lot of the foreign election interference investigations. I mean, again, we're seeing a long list. It's very quick, these things that are being attempted. Some of them are fully in motion, some of them are in motion. There's a range here. The fourth category is deploying the military domestically. For a while, when we did this presentation, we would describe historical things that Trump had done. And now we have Los Angeles as a very clear example. And so it's worthwhile to actually mark this playbook Trump didn't write. This was already written. We had been doing this presentation, and in fact, the authoritarian book has been written by some of our colleagues at Protect Democracy. It had been written before Trump was in office, because this is a playbook that is unique to Trump. He's not brilliant and writing a whole new thing that no one has ever seen before. He's following sort of a series of actions that we've seen in other places. So let's go to the next category, federal law enforcement overreach. So there are many examples. I mean, ICE has been, I think, one of the more dramatic ones that we could watch, that sort of high profile, the ICE arrests happening in sanctuary cities, elsewhere. Polygraph testing within the FBI, the constant use of tariffs that Trump doesn't appear to have been given as president, the power of, on and on. All of these are drifting power towards the autocrat, towards the central. And so that's the general drift. And the sixth category of things that authoritarians do in sort of the authoritarian playbook is the autocrat won't leave. And so we can go to that last slide there of the autocrat won't leave. And that we've already seen being floated out. DOJ officials declined to rule out a third term. Trump publicly floating strategies to extend his presidency. Trump asking for state voter rolls and election data. All these are some setups that we need to really keep an eye on. So I guess I just want to say, like, there's some good news embedded in this. So some good news, which is, one, Trump didn't write this playbook. Two, this is a global phenomena. And at least to some degree, I think I can release myself, and some of us might find some release in the idea that this isn't merely a US failure of imagination of what might happen, or this isn't merely our side losing and the other side. There's a global phenomena happening here of the growth of autocracies, and that more and more folks out there are combating, which also means there are a bunch of allies outside of just even this huge call here, might be the largest non-cooperation training. But there are lots and lots of people who are also allies in the rest of the globe who are rooting for us, who have also a bunch of things to teach us. And so part of what we're going to do on this call is bring a little bit of that wisdom, knowledge, expertise from folks who have successfully overthrown their dictator or an autocrat, in terms of what are some of the different ways that they're understanding power, what are some of the different things that they are doing in order to be effective and successful. All right, next slide. So I won't do a lot of analysis. It's not my way. Maria's actually more the analytical one on our team, the academic, but I'll bring you this. So I'll read this slide in case you're not able to read it, or it'll help you. But there's a group of researchers who took 35 cases of sort of, let's just call it democratic backsliding. So if you identify democracy could go more democratic or less democratic. So they identified places where democracies were rapidly backsliding. And you see they took cases from 1991 to 2021. So they wondered, how often were people successful? Okay, so first answer here. How often were they successful? Next slide. Was most of the time, they were only successful at 7.5% if they were not able to create a civil resistance movement. What do I mean by civil resistance movement? I mean the thing that you all have already been in motion on. The thing of no kings, going into the streets, doing actions, getting people to be in motion, resisting out loud, not going to the fear, saying we're not complying, the whole gamut. I don't just mean one thing. I mean the gamut of a civil resistance, which means civil society gets itself together. It might always be pretty, it's not always clean, it's not always in unity, but that civil society begins to move. So if there's no civil resistance movement, very low probability of winning. Next slide. When there is a civil resistance movement, what they found was that over half the time, 51.7% of the time, uh, then the movement was able to be successful. Two things here. One, I don't love those numbers. I mean, it's still a coin toss, not my ideal. I would love it to be much stronger. But the second thing is that with a civil resistance movement, they found that the movement was able to make the country more democratic than it had been before. And I think that's critical for us to understand. We're not going back. There's not a sort of return to, but in fact, an advancement. And that's what a civil resistance movement does. Next slide. So we're in a bit of a race, and I talked about the consolidation, and I'm not an anxious person typically. Those of you who know me, I'm pretty relaxed, and so I am bringing a little bit of anxiety to this question because there is time. We have a window that we have to move. So we're in a race against time, our people versus the regime. So our task right now, and again, I'll read the slides, is to build and activate a powerful opposition of cross society, multiple kinds of people. Some of those people that you love, some people you like, some people you don't like, some people you don't love. Mass defiance, not a little bit of defiance, but a lot in a lot of places. Capable of interrupting the regime. So that means not just that we're asking the regime, but we're actually getting into the gears through nonviolent tactics that engage a broad range of participants. So that means a lot of different kinds of activity will be done. And so I stand fully as a cheerleader for people who are trying to figure things out, who don't know exactly what they're doing, but I'm trying something. Let's, there will be a lot of things. Some of them will work, some of them won't work, some of them might backfire. We're going to work to offer some suggestions, but more than anything, we just want to be encouragement to keep going. Okay, last slide that I'm going to cover. And it's a question of what does the wannabe king want us to do? So before we talk about what is it that us on this call want you all to do, what does the wannabe king want us to do? What's the hope for the autocrat? The hope of the autocrat is one, that we're going to give up on each other. We're going to give up on elections, maybe because we decide, oh, we can't even win it because they're just going to steal it. Or that we're going to give up on elections because we say, oh, we don't have a good enough alternative or something, but that we give up on our democratic, what we already have. And they hope that we'll give up on a democratic dream. So I have a vision for a democracy I've never lived in, full engaged of economic democracy and so forth. And so one hope is that you give up on it. We can't get it. We live in political reality. I just can't imagine. And if you can't imagine, then you can't dream. If you can't dream, really hard to get there. A second one is that we and other people excuse his crackdowns. There will be plenty of reasons that he will create. Oh, they were violent. Oh, they're not one of our people. Oh, they're only non-citizens. Oh, they're something. There will always be a series of different excuses that he will create. Irregardless of how we got there, our position has to be clear. We are not falling for his excuses. We are not accepting crackdowns. We are not accepting violence from him, from the state, on our people who are attempting to create liberation, create freedom. A third is for us to choose comfort over courage. I think we're all struggling. What risks are we willing to take? How far are we willing to go? What are the things that we're up for doing? And one reason that we talk about this is risk in isolation is far more dangerous than risk with some other people. And so I might not be willing to risk anything, but I might when I'm connected to some other people. And that's part of the reason for the community resistance gatherings as an ask here to help us make sure that we've got some structure, a few people around to look out for each other. Another one that Trump hopes that we'll stop persuading new people to join, that will kind of get caught with our own bubble. And we just got to keep absorbing new people, some people who voted for Trump, some people who still love the man, but this thing, some people who just have given up on all of this political thing. Some people who, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like a big circle. Another thing he wants is he wants us to fight each other to get into as much intra warfare over, oh, you said this tactic, but I meant this tactic, and that one's not the good enough one, and that kind of thing. And I think other thing is to forget the stakes. And here's just helpful to remember the stakes are not an abstract democracy. The stakes are very visceral and real. I experience it every morning when I wake up and I think about my daughter and I think about what kind of society will she be in the future. And so coming back to those stakes for ourselves, I don't risk just for myself, I risk for my family, my people. And then the last one, and maybe the most important one that he hopes is to believe that we're alone. Do you remember those early months where there was a story, nobody's doing anything? And it was belied by the fact that many of you all on this call were doing things. And the mainstream media missed the boat. I mean, they just missed the boat. But that story, nobody's doing anything, is a very important story for an autocrat because they want to be able to grow that story, that sense of isolation. And in fact, one of the sort of ways I understand what creates an authoritarian regime is when people get very isolated. There's a philosopher, Hannah Arendt, who's written about this in The Origins of Totalitarianism. And she says what creates this is, she uses a word called Verlassenheit, which is often translated as loneliness. The idea that people are on their own, not talking to other people about how they're processing the world, how they're making meaning. And that what we do is we then just clutch on to someone who's going to give us simple answers. So the alternative to this is to be in connection with other people. That's again a value for these community gatherings. So are we going to give the regime what it wants? No. Together we can build a community resilience. We can learn strategic necessary to meet this moment. And here I'm going to turn it over to Maria, who's going to talk about the tactics, the strategy that is useful from other regimes that we've learned about how do you actually fight an authoritarian. All right, over to you, Maria.
All right, thank you, Daniel. And heck no, we won't give the regime what it wants. And hell yes, we will build the democracy we want in community with each other. And, so much of what Daniel just said resonated with me, even just viscerally, physically. Things seem so bleak right now. And it's because this regime is so relentless in its attacks. But the good news is that people in this country and around the world have stared down authoritarianism. They have struggled hard and they have prevailed. And they've done this using the civil resistance and non-cooperation strategies that we're talking about tonight. And we can draw on this powerful legacy, and it's such a source of hope. So how about, as the examples, how about our own civil rights activists who dismantled racial authoritarianism in the Jim Crow South, using legal and legislative strategies, but also boycotts, strikes, sit-ins, freedom rides, and other campaigns of nonviolent resistance. Or in Chile, where striking coal miners and people banging pots and pans and walking slowly in the streets helped bring down the Pinochet dictatorship. Or in South Africa, where a united democratic front comprised of unions, faith organizations, and civic groups launched strikes and targeted boycotts of white-owned businesses and divested from racial apartheid, leading to that country's democratic transition. Or most recently in South Korea, where a mass movement comprised of youth wielding K-pop sticks, opposition legislators, a powerful confederation of trade unions pushed back against martial law and impeached their autocratic leader. In all of these cases, populations facing formidable obstacles engaged in organized strategic campaigns of nonviolent resistance and non-cooperation and helped defeat those authoritarian regimes. Next slide, please. So, as Daniel mentioned, I am a political scientist, a researcher by training, and together with my friend and fellow political scientist, Erica Chenoweth, we studied hundreds of campaigns challenging authoritarian regimes globally. And, while there is no blueprint for victory, and as Daniel said, every day we are struggling to figure out what is the right thing to do. So, while there's no blueprint, pro-democracy movements around the world that have won big victories have had a few things in common. First, they were able to build and sustain mass participation, drawing on a broad range of communities and constituencies. Mass movements with millions of workers, teachers, lawyers, truck drivers, farmers, merchants, and students who are engaged in active defiance are very difficult to repress. Now, you've probably heard the statistic based on this research that no regime has stayed in power when 3.5% of the population has engaged in active protest. Now, getting there, because that's a pretty big number, that's about 11 million Americans actually. Getting to that number requires good old-fashioned organizing, building broad and diverse fronts that are cross-ideological and cross-sectoral. And that means finding common cause with people you may fundamentally disagree with, but you can agree that we need to stop this tyranny. So the second attribute of successful campaigns, they drew on a wide repertoire of nonviolent tactics. They shook things up and generated pressure from all sides. They used protests, marches, and petitions, but also sit-ins, walkouts, consumer boycotts, worker strikes and slowdowns, the building of parallel institutions. More tactics means more opportunities to get new people involved, more ways to create leverage over an authoritarian regime, and more ways to generate and sustain momentum. And momentum is key to success. The third attribute of successful campaigns, they feature defections and loyalty shifts within key institutional pillars. Workers restricted their labor. Faith communities refused to allow their religion to be a tool of authoritarianism. Civil servants refused to carry out illegal orders. Businesses applied financial pressure. Security forces refused to obey orders to repress protesters. We're going to talk through a lot of that tonight. Finally, successful movements have anticipated regime violence and repression, and they organized, they trained, they prepared so that when the repression happened, activists were in prison, people were abducted, workers were fired, communities were harmed. The regime perpetrators paid a price. In other words, people organized to make repression backfire. Next slide, please. So what gives me a lot of hope in this moment is that authoritarians are often weaker than they appear, and we are stronger than we might think. Autocrats' Achilles heel is that they ultimately rely on the active and passive support of ordinary people organized in key organizations and institutions in society who provide them with the power they need to implement policies and wield control. These are the pillars of support, which are like columns holding up a Greek temple. And that's the image on this slide, as of something that looks like a Greek temple with columns that are propping it up. So the business pillar provides financial resources. The labor pillar keeps the economy running and boasts a large organized base. Faith organizations provide moral authority. Education institutions boast intellectual power and human capacity. Civil servants are responsible for executing policies and basically getting anything done. Security forces wield coercive power. These pillars and their social, political, and economic power ultimately prop up regimes. And when they crack and power within them shifts, the entire edifice can crumble. And so the next slide, please. So this slide shows a cross image of a pillar. It looks like the rings of a tree, basically. So the important point here is that pillars are not monolithic, and power within them is fluid. Pillars are made up of individuals who have different identities, motivations, and interests. For example, within the business pillar, you may have at the center CEOs who may be the most closely aligned with authoritarian regimes. The next layer out, managers may face management challenges or they may want their workers to be productive. The next layer out, you have workers who want to be treated fairly and equitably. Then the next layer out, you have consumers who may support many different kinds of causes and have huge buying power. So the important point here is that different parts of these pillars may move differently based on different incentives. So the actions that consumers take on the outside of the pillar may influence the managers who in turn move the CEOs who are forced to respond to all these actions. So it shows all the different ways that you can influence people within these pillars. Next slide, please. Now, this quote from Gene Sharp, who's one of the kind of leading scholars of nonviolent action, gets at the heart of both why pillars are important and why non-cooperation is important. Gene Sharp wrote, "By themselves, rulers cannot collect taxes, enforce repressive laws and regulations, keep trains running on time, prepare national budgets, direct traffic, manage ports, print money, repair roads, keep markets supplied with food, make steel, build rockets, train the police and army, issue postage stamps, or even milk a cow. People provide these services to the ruler through a variety of organizations and institutions. If people would stop providing these skills, the ruler could not rule." Next slide. So, in other words, the key point here is that without the knowledge, skills, backing of individuals within these key pillars, no autocratic leader, no matter how repressive, how mendacious, can maintain power. All of us are embedded, or most of us are embedded in these pillars through our schools, through our workplaces, through our places of worship, through the community groups that we belong to, or we are in a position to influence these pillars, to shift their incentives through our organizing and collective action. And that is what makes all of us collectively so incredibly powerful. So the really important point here is that we need all sorts of actions to defeat authoritarianism. That includes working within institutions, the voting, the advocacy, the litigation, the calling of representatives, all important stuff. That's the inside strategy. But when those institutions are under assault or are in the hands of hostile powers, we need to wield power outside of those institutions. And we need to get the institutional enablers of authoritarianism to withdraw their support from the authoritarian system and to get behind a democracy based on the will of the people. That was such a clear strategic insight of the civil rights leaders who understood that they needed to go after the enablers of racial apartheid in the South. And so the targets of the sit-ins, the boycotts, the strikes were the businesses and the civic institutions that prop that system up. Now that authoritarianism is consolidating at the federal level in this country, the strategic insight from that period is so critically important. Next slide. So how do we do that? There are three main categories of nonviolent action. They include protest and persuasion, they include building alternatives, and they include a non-cooperation. So we're going to go through all three of those. So first is protest and persuasion tactics. So these are actions that are used to express disapproval. They can be done in many ways, both digitally and in real life, including through marches, rallies, demonstrations, the wearing of symbols, bird dogging or oppressing legislators, projecting protest messages on walls, dropping banners, educating friends and family about issues, and recruiting them to join protest. Now, methods of protest and persuasion help people overcome fear, apathy, and acquiescence. They promote a sense of solidarity, and they signal to people the existence of an unjust and intolerable situation. How powerful did we all feel participating in the hands-off, May Day, No Kings rallies? How fun were those, and how much did they promote a sense that we are in this together and we have numbers? So incredibly powerful stuff. The next set of tactics is the building of alternatives. Next slide, please. So the purpose of these tactics is to strengthen the capacity and self-reliance of a nonviolent movement and to undermine popular support for institutions that are under authoritarian control. So the function of alternative institutions may be to meet the social, economic, or political needs of a population, or to replace harmful or repressive institutions, or to support the execution of tactics like strikes and boycotts. So, for example, setting up a strike fund to support striking workers. Now, examples of this include mutual aid groups, alternative communications and transportation systems, systems to accompany targeted populations like immigrants, food cooperatives, underground clinics, and groups that are providing a vision for what we are fighting for, which is so critically important to move people, all critical actions. And these building of alternatives are also key because this is what sustains non-cooperation, which is what we're talking about tonight. Next slide. So non-cooperation tactics, this non-cooperation is all about intentional strategic stubbornness. It involves actively disrupting the status quo by refusing to do what is expected of you or doing what is not expected of you, and withdrawing support and cooperation from unjust policies or systems. Tactics include workers restricting labor or going on strike, bureaucrats refusing to carry out illegal or immoral policies, faith leaders locking arms, sitting down, and refusing to accept an immoral budget bill. It means refusing to participate in unjust institutions like lawyers who left bar associations in the Jim Crow South because of their racist codes. Or it means participating in economic boycotts of companies that are supporting authoritarian regimes. Next slide. So just to bring back a definition, since this is so core to what we are talking about, non-cooperation is the act of refusing to comply with requests, demands, or orders by individuals, institutions, or governments. They are typically the most powerful set of methods because they involve directly removing an opponent's sources of social, political, and economic power. You are not advocating or asking for permission with non-cooperation. You are directly shifting power. So you can participate in non-cooperation as individuals, as members of pillars that we talked about, or as members of community groups that are trying to influence those pillars. And I should say, too, some of the research that Daniel cited earlier from Jonathan Pinkney and Claire Trilling found that when pillars themselves engage in organized non-cooperation, the chances of stopping democratic backsliding increase significantly. So engaging and pressuring these pillars is really key. And that can be done in different ways. It may involve pressuring the pillars and protesting, but often it involves good old-fashioned organizing, meeting with members of those pillars, engaging them, trying to move them. So we need all different approaches vis-a-vis these pillars. So, and I know Ash is going to be talking about different types of social, economic, and political non-cooperation, but I wanted to highlight a few really great examples of non-cooperation that are happening around the country. Next slide, please. So you may have seen that last April, the Naval Academy removed 381 books from its library, citing a Pentagon directive to remove and to review and remove material related to DEI. And that included books by Maya Angelou and Harper Lee. Incredible. So Naval Academy grads, including prominent retired commanders, wrote an open letter to the vice admiral leading the school saying that the decision to pull the books threatened the very existence of the institution. So in this case, you could say that the graduates' action was a protest. It was a writing of an open letter expressing dissent. However, its goal was to get the school's leadership to stop cooperating with the anti-DEI directive. Meanwhile, the naval graduates ran a crowdfunding campaign to replace the books. They partnered with local bookstores, raised $70,000, and were able to, en masse replace the books. So a good example of building alternatives, backing up protests and non-cooperation. Ultimately, their actions were successful, and most of the books, I think with the exception of 5 or so, which is still too many, were returned to the shelves. So that's a great victory. Next slide. Now, after universities like Columbia capitulated to the administration's demands that it change its DEI and campus policies or face federal funding cuts, Harvard faced a similar ultimatum. But ultimately, Harvard's leadership decided not to capitulate and instead filed lawsuits against the administration. They faced very strong internal pressure from faculty, students, and alumni who organized petitions, open letters, and legal strategies calling on Harvard to refuse to comply with what they saw as an attack on higher ed's and independence. So the noncompliance in this case has not come without significant cost, including the loss of millions of dollars in federal contracts. However, Harvard gained significant support from other universities, and students, faculty, and alumni have kept up the pressure to hold the line. And that has helped shift the social norms within the academy and beyond, which is critically important. Also, so teachers nationwide have been told to remove DEI materials from their classrooms. And one of those teachers was an Idaho AFT member named Sarah Inama. She was ordered to take down an "Everyone is Welcome" poster. She took the courageous path and refused. She refused to take down the sign. And her story resonated with so many people that a local television station interviewed her. The community rallied to support her message. A local business, a screen printer offered to print 20,000 t-shirts, which were distributed around the community. Students followed up by chalking "Everyone is welcome" at the school. The story went viral. So it's a great example how an individual act of non-cooperation had ripple effects and spread to the community and beyond. Next slide, please. So federal workers have also engaged in acts of noncompliance. Last spring, as DOGE was taking a chainsaw to federal agencies, employees from the U.S. African Development Foundation physically blocked access to DOGE agents, preventing them from entering their office. The foundation filed a lawsuit, which is still pending in courts. And then in June, the LA Dodgers publicly barred ICE agents from accessing Dodger Stadium's property after federal enforcement vehicles arrived at the entrance and asked to use the parking lot. And I should say, the Dodgers were facing a lot of pressure from their Latino and immigrant base. And a few days before this happened, a very prominent Latino singer and influencer, Neza, herself engaged in an act of non-cooperation by singing the national anthem in Spanish in Dodger Stadium against the will of the management. And that helped up the ante, which I think helped nudge the Dodgers to push back against ICE and refuse to comply. And then there's the case of Avelo Airlines, which has contracts with ICE to conduct deportation flights. Now, when immigrant rights groups, including Indivisible and other groups in New Haven, Connecticut, which is an Avelo hub, found out about these deportation flights, they acted. They pressed their city council to cut transportation subsidies to the airline, and those subsidies were cut out of the budget. So this was a major victory and a sign of what targeted campaigns of ICE enablers can achieve. Finally, the last slide before I turn things over to Ash, the Tesla takedown boycott, probably one of the most successful consumer boycotts in recent history. It included selling off Teslas, protesting outside of showrooms, divesting from Tesla stock, and pressuring shareholders, and generally making the company toxic while plummeting shareholder value at a level that's like kind of unprecedented, over $100 billion. And then there was the very successful boycott of Target over its anti-DEI policies that was launched by Nina Turner and Reverend Jamal Bryant, which began with a Lenten fast, has continued. Something like 11% of Target sales were hit, costing the company billions of dollars. So these are just a few ongoing examples of boycotts that are making of acts of non-cooperation that are making a difference in this country. And now Ash is going to share some more stories of what's up.
Thank you, Maria. Good evening, good people. Y'all take a deep breath. We've been rushing. Y'all been in the Q&A dropping all sorts of amazing questions. I want to remind you to upvote the ones that you think that we should be prioritizing in the future trainings. I see you all online, all of the homies on Blue Sky. Y'all are amazing. Keep using the hashtag 1 million rising, the number 1 million rising. Talk to us there. We are seeing it. We are seeing you. Thank you for not regarding it robbery to be on this call tonight. For all the homies here on Zoom, for the thousands that are watching on YouTube, we see you. We appreciate you. Thank you for being here. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one, but I assume that many of us signed up for this training tonight and the 1 million Rising series in totality because we want to figure out what we can do in addition to hitting the streets with our signs and declaring our allegiance to the common good for all people and making very, very clear our disgust, our absolute disgust with the evil of this administration. If that's you, then I think I'm in the right place. And I imagine many of you, like me, wake up every single morning wondering, what in the world can I even do? Like, what meaningful action can I take today that actually blocks the Trump administration and all of his evil cronies from consolidating their wealth and power? What helps us build the kind of solidarity and people power that actually gets us the governance and society and culture that we want in this country? Can I even make an impact? It's overwhelming, right? It might make me feel really small and not able to do a whole heck of a lot. I might be waiting to see the 3.5 million people before I feel like I can have an impact, right? Maybe it's just me. I think we should talk about it. I think we should talk about it honestly. I think we should take the time to dream up some faithful next steps that we can take that are within this framework of non cooperation and what that might make more possible, what impossible things that might make more possible in our collective future, not just in the long term, but in the here and now. So maybe we are inspired by folks like Rosa Parks and we decide to boycott corporations that are building wealth for billionaires who harm our communities and buy elections for folks like Donald Trump and his minions. Maybe we build the infrastructure to support those boycotts and hold them long term. Maybe we encourage and support our favorites in the entertainment industry to use their platforms to bend the moral arc of the universe towards justice. Y'all remember strike season in 2020 when basketball players from the WNBA and the NBA refused to play in protest against racial injustice and police brutality. And maybe you were also one of the ones, the 27 some odd million people that were in the streets that year. Maybe we build and support infrastructure for educators to be brave. I saw all sorts of questions about how do we support and activate educators and teachers, right? Y'all remember Red for Ed, the movement where teachers and educators wore red to show solidarity and advocate for increased funding for public education across the country? Remember it taking off across the country after the teacher strikes? Shout out to all the people on the call from West Virginia and Oklahoma and Arizona who made that work happen. Maybe we celebrate the student walkouts. I saw the questions in the Q&A from young people that were like, "Well, I'm just a teenager. What can I do?" Well, they're trying to keep y'all from being able to read books about yourselves. Maybe we say that's not okay and we get creative about how to make sure people have access to those books. Maybe you walk out in defiance of the terrible things that they are doing to you and to your teachers. There's all sorts of things that we could be doing. Maybe we support the independent freedom school movement that folks have been doing, folks like Children's Defense Fund and others. Maybe we all call in sick to work on the same day. Maybe we get back in the streets with our friends from the labor movement on Labor Day. Maybe we write letters to the editor that help our neighbors see that they're not alone in being disgusted by the harms perpetuated on our people by this administration and folks who are in power who just sit complicitly and let it happen. Maybe we make our social and faith spaces sanctuary for marginalized and targeted people like undocumented folks or queer and trans people who are being targeted. Maybe we use those spaces to build supports for our neighbors in need, whether that's making sure they have access to food or healthcare or just community. Maybe we take our No King signs and we put them up as yard signs or flags or posters in the windows of our favorite small businesses. Maybe we make it socially and politically toxic for billionaire broligarchs to be in proximity to the services that we need. Anybody got a T-Mobile contract? Y'all know Elon's got Starlink on that phone. Would you get rid of it if it meant keeping money out of his pockets that he uses to buy elections? Shout out to the Tesla takedown team. Maybe we make sure our favorite public libraries have the books that they've been told to ban, and maybe we actually read them together. Maybe we organize our neighbors to be ready to take some action at the ballot boxes in the upcoming races. Maybe we register our folks. Maybe we keep calling our elected officials to illustrate the impact of their actions or inactions on our communities. Maybe faith communities pressure the sheriffs in their communities to not cooperate with ICE. Maybe we do everything in goodwill that we can to make their evil visible and uncomfortable with our solidarity, with our respect, with our commitment to being in movement that ends this wannabe kingdom's reign. Maybe we individually do the best that we can to be non cooperative. Maybe we're also bigger than the sum of our parts together to make people and corporations and electeds in power be non cooperative. We want them to deflect. Maybe we see that everything we can do, every faithful step we can take that challenges their attempts to consolidate their wealth and power at the expense of us and our communities, that blocks their attempts to kill, steal, and destroy, and keep us fighting each other while building community, while building relationship, while building our numbers, building our trust, building our power. Maybe we protest and support our neighbors. Maybe we boycott and donate to local organizations that are fighting for immigrant justice. Maybe we call our legislators and we hold them accountable for prioritizing warfare over healthcare, and we plan the community health fair that makes sure our people get taken care of anyway. Maybe we block and build. And because we blocked, we stopped the consolidation of authoritarian power from the White House to our hoods and hollers. And because we built, we'll have the relationships and skills at the ready, the ability, the power to govern the second that we oust them. We don't come together in this sacred virtual space that we create together to learn these things or just for the sake of being smarter people, because we know us just smarter people do not necessarily a country save, a democracy save. And we don't just come here to feel more hopeful, though that is critically important to our work and well-being. We do this work, this training, this learning together work to inform our next actions. So y'all know I don't believe in doing this training without asking you for something, asking you to do something. I'm going to ask you to commit to hosting a community gathering that can bring people together and make this work happen right where you are right now. Y'all, we've already had, even before this call, we've already got 400 folks committed to hosting a community gathering, people who have taken the 1 million Rising pledge. I think we should get that to 1,000 tonight. Do you think we can do it? I need to know that we can do it. I need us to get to 1,000 pledges tonight. I want you to go to www.nokings.org /, or actually, y'all told me it's not a backslash, so just /rise. www.nokings.org /rise. It's in the Zoom chat. We'll make sure you've got it on the YouTube. One more time for good measure, I want you to go to www.nokings.org /rise right now. And I want you to trust it. I want you to make your commitment. You might be like, Ashley, I don't know what to do. Like, if I make this pledge, I want to make sure I can do it excellently. That's okay. I got you. There's 2 more trainings in this series, and there's already a toolkit on that said website. You can go there, check out the toolkit. It will give you every resource you need and a step-by-step plan of the things that you can do to activate your community to participate in this 1 million Rising pledge, to be non-compliant, to get ready with your crew, to do meaningful and impactful work of scaling up our non-cooperation with this evil administration. I want you to let me know on social media. You can pick the app of your choice. Y'all are already talking to me on Blue Sky. I see you. I want you to use the hashtag 1 million Rising and let me know you're down. Again, you can sign up for the pledge. by going to www.nokings.org/rise. You can take the pledge. Let's get to 1,000 strong tonight. Friends, you're going to keep wanting to know what to do every day that you wake up. I know because since we've been doing the mass calls, you all have been DMing me asking me what to do. I don't know that there's just going to be one answer, friends. I think that what we know is that there are over 200 different activities that you can participate in that helps build a non-cooperation movement in this country. There are tons of tactics. You don't have to take a huge risk, and some of us have to take every risk, right, to do this meaningful work. But there's a quote that's been rotating in my brain that helps me answer that question every morning I wake up. The first version of that quote is power concedes nothing without a demand. That's from Frederick Douglass. And then my dear friend Charlene Carruthers wrote a book called Unapologetic, where she wrote power concedes nothing without an organized demand. I think that's right too. But I would add that power concedes nothing without an organized demand and a consequence. And oh, let us come together powerfully with solidarity as our practice and belonging as our value, with the organized demand of no kings. Let us be the consequence. Daniel, I'll toss it back to you.
Thank you, Ash. I can tell that you have preacher blood in you, and I love it. I'm here for it. So I think we can go to the next slide as we're transitioning into kind of why these community resistance gatherings. Now, I'll say this. A couple of months ago, I realized I would need a crew of people around me, some folks I love and trust and respect, who I can think through the question, how do I get into formation right now? How do I do more? How do I risk more? What are the examples of non-cooperation? Because a little bit what you heard in this call is a bunch of different options. We're going to whittle that down and offer like a few more that are sort of specific, actions that we want to support folks to do in future calls. But what we wanted here on this call is to talk about why non-cooperation, why we will do more than just, for example, in addition, beautiful, marching in the streets, but also how do we help have a conversation with somebody who is, well, I mean, one of the folks in that gathering that I held, that they work with teachers, they work in a school, and they said, we need to figure out how do we not comply with some of these orders that are coming through. And so that space, the community resistance gathering, was a space to talk through what that looks like. And so this is about community. This is about if we believe in democracy, that means that part of it isn't answers out there. It means answers inside that we wrestle with. So in that spirit, I want someone to just tell me what to do. I'm with you. And I also realize there are many things that need to be done that only you have vision for. So both of those things being true, holding that tension line, I just want to honor, all of the energy around this and really recommit and encourage folks to really commit to how is it that we engage in conversation with each other so that we support each other to take greater risks, to think through what are the different things that are coming. Because indeed there are things, worse things coming. I mean, we can see that with the escalation of ICE. And so that means we have to ask ourselves some questions. Who are we with? Who are we connected with? And so this community gathering, which we are now over 2,000 pledges, folks. So this is what a movement looks like in this moment. So let's keep it going. Again, nokings.org/rise. Over to you, Nora.
Hey, amazing. Thank you so much. The Zoom spotlighting, all the different pieces, just keeping it moving. Okay, thank you, Daniel. Honestly, I'm about to talk about these gatherings, but I needed to hear that personally from you in order to, yeah, channel what I'm about to say now too. Also, y'all, I have the back end of the pledges, and we can't even keep up with this. I think we're far past 3,000 at this point. So that's really exciting. And hopefully we'll be even, yeah. Also, we set the goal for 1,000. Clearly, one thing we're learning out of this is that, don't lowball the No Kings community and the 1 Million Rising community because y'all are really showing up. So I'm just gonna walk through a couple logistical pieces and a little bit more in orientation to what are we talking about when we're talking about a community resistance gathering. We can go to the next slide here. Um, Yes. So we're inviting you to host a gathering. What do we mean by a community resistance gathering? We mean a meeting of, a small group of people who have probably some kind of connection to each other, who are going to come together to build that connection, to build knowledge together, to build readiness and resilience around fighting authoritarianism, just like Daniel was just describing. Why we're asking you to host one, it's because we believe that like as many people as possible need to be thinking about this stuff, need to be learning about mass defiance, about non-cooperation, about fighting authoritarianism, and being together with each other, given what time it is in this moment. So everybody who's here tonight, showing up to these calls, gonna watch the recording after the effect. Hi to my recording friends in the future. Taking this pledge right now, you've taken a huge step by just doing that and showing up in that piece and probably other things you're doing in your life too. And now we're inviting you to gather some small group of other people in your life to share these learnings beyond that. So we can go to the next slide. You might have noticed this training series called 1 Million Rising. What's the math on that? Okay. It's been a little while since I taught math, but I think I can handle this piece. We had over 100,000 people signed up for this call series. Between Zoom and the live stream and recording folks, if we are getting about 100,000 people at these calls or watching this content, and y'all can host a gathering where you get maybe about 10 people each on average, that's how we're trying to get to this goal of 1 million more people ready to participate. Okay, if we still got that 3.5% number in mind, some of the slides earlier about what it takes to build a civil resistance movement, let alone why one is important, that's kind of what we got in mind. So we can go to the next slide. If you have not already, and I will throw it in the chat one more time, let's just see how far we can get these pledges going. I will check real quick where the back end is at right now. Goodness gracious, where are we at? Yeah, it looks like we're far past 4,000 gatherings at this point. Oh no, not quite. Okay, 3,800. We'll probably be past 4,000 by the time I go to the next slide. Let's see if we can. Yeah, that 1K. Yeah, that 1K number. That's in the past now. We can get to 5K at least tonight. Okay, let's keep it moving. We can go to the next slide. I'm just going to talk a little bit about how to do this. What are you actually going to do? Okay, you might be wondering, who should I invite? For this kind of context, we encourage you to invite people you already have some kind of connection to. It doesn't mean you absolutely need to know them. Maybe it's like a friend of a friend, or like, your colleague's spouse or something like that. But people you have some kind of connection to. This is not a situation where you're just blasting it all the way to the public. If you do have some kind of existing network, like maybe you're part of an Indivisible group, a local mutual aid organization, something where you already have relationship and connection, that's great. You can definitely host in that context. And yeah, if you want to be hitting the math with us, aiming for around 10 people is good. More or less is okay too. Where to host it. So these are definitely something you can host at home, or you could host at a public space like a library, maybe a friendly local business, somewhere else that kind of makes sense to you based on where you live and what feels most comfortable. What are you going to do at this gathering? I think we have one more slide that elaborates on that a little bit more, but we have a toolkit that we're going to be providing and training folks on in our next session, basically sharing the ideas that we're covering tonight, and that we'll recap again next time. When, in who, what, where, when, you can actually start scheduling these now, because ideally you're going to hold them in between our second and third sessions in the 1 Million Rising series. So let's go to the next slide for a little bit more detail. Ideally, you're going to host two gatherings, okay? One is going to be between July 31st and August 12th. That's our second and third 1 Million Rising session. To kind of just be talking through the ideas, just like Daniel was just saying, talking through the ideas, how can it apply, what's going on in the community that we're part of, our presence in the pillars, our connection to different sectors of society, where you see opportunities for defiance in your lives. And then a second one, don't worry about it right now. Don't worry about it, it's fine. We'll get there when we get there. Just focus on the first one. But ideally, a second one after August 13th to talk about next steps, how you're going to take action with fellow people who came to your gathering, including how you can plug into some national opportunities. Doesn't have to be all on your own. Let's go to the next slide. So again, you might be like, wait a second, what's actually going to happen at this gathering? What am I actually going to do? Okay. Plain and simple, these gatherings are a chance to be talking about fighting authoritarianism, working toward mass defiance, and taking part in strategic non-cooperation with people in your life and your community. All those tools from the toolbox, a lot of those possibilities that that Ash just covered, that Maria was citing in her content, talking through those options and how they might show up in your lives. I just want to say some of these ideas might be like new or still settling in. Like I helped organize this Zoom call tonight, and I'm still feeling like I'm learning a lot every time I'm kind of soaking it in. So that's okay. You don't need to be an expert. In fact, taking the chance to process through with people you're in a relationship with is part of the value in and of itself. So don't worry. We are going to dig in even further next week. We're going to prep you to host with confidence and clarity. There's going to be resources provided along the way, logistically, conceptually, all of that. Like I said at the beginning, stay with us, stretch with us, give it a shot. We can go to the next slide. There's a little bit of sample language on this slide about like how you might go about inviting somebody, like especially if gathering people for some sort of political purpose isn't something that you feel particularly comfortable with or have done before. It can work to just say like, hey, we just had this conversation about, or I don't know if you've been feeling concerned about like Medicaid and SNAP cuts, ICE stealing our neighbors off the street, closure of government agencies, whatever it is, and just say like, I'm having some people over to kind of talk through this a little bit and just see how we can be part of what's next. If those are people you maybe went to know Kings with, or people you talk about this with anyway. But also, you don't have to already be talking about these things with somebody. Maybe somebody you see at the gym or somebody again in your faith community. There doesn't have to always be a known shared political context in order to maybe open up that door and see if that might be somebody who is feeling really concerned about what's going on right now. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Just want to talk a little bit about safety and logistics. This piece can get a little in the weeds, but it's super important. So stay with me. And also, it'll be in the slides and in other resources if you need a recap. Don't worry, you don't got to write down every word. Okay, we host events on a platform called Mobilize, which you'll be able to use to register your events on. It's kind of an organizing event platform. It makes it really easy to have a link to share with people you want to invite. Like you're talking to that person at the grocery store and you're like, hey, let me just text you this link. And then you can track RSVPs. So especially if you're going to have people over at your house, you might want to know for sure who's coming, just like a party or something, even though this isn't a party. We do want to encourage folks pretty strongly in this kind of circumstance to keep your time and location private. So again, this is not something that we're just going to blast to any Facebook group or whatever. You don't want to share the event details outside of those that you're intentionally inviting. Again, that could still be, like a second or third degree of connection, but just not a totally public piece. And particularly if you're going to host it at home, you really want to make sure that you're keeping that location private and non-searchable. And I'll give some Mobilize information on that in a second. Maybe you're somebody who's feeling like, I'm not comfortable hosting an event. I don't see myself doing that. I want to just invite you. It might be more possible than you think. But if you're really sure that's not going to be an option for you, I do want to say, please keep attending these calls. Come back with us on July 30th and August 13th. You still have the option to look for opportunities to talk about these things with people in your life, to talk about resisting authoritarianism. And we are going to have some actions coming up that folks can take more as an individual in some of the sessions to come. So that will still be an option. And if you get lost a little bit in logistics you're like, why should I do this again? I just want to be very clear. They don't want us to do this. And honestly, that's why we should. The regime does not want us gathering. That whole list that Daniel had up on the slide a little while ago, they want us to stay isolated, they want us to stay afraid, and they want us to stay cooperating. Okay, so the more of us who come together and hold these kinds of spaces and are connecting with others in these ways, the safer we all can be inside that. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. Again, a little bit in the weeds on Mobilize, but it's super important. Once you go to set up your event in Mobilize, there's going to be a couple of different options that we encourage you to use. And also, we'll be making sure that all events follow some of this. Okay. One is that the visibility is going to be private. That means people can't just find it if they go to mobilize.com or whatever, mobilize.us. They can only see the actual listing if they've got the direct link. And also that only people who are actually attending can see the location. And again, we will make sure that that is the case for all events in the approval process, but just to let you know upfront. I also want to highlight a really, really, really important tool that you will have as the host of an event on Mobilize, which is the option to email your attendees. So because of the way these platforms are set up, there's just some limitations on how much you can go in and sort of edit and update the event once it's created. But a way that you're going to be able to communicate with people that you've invited, tell them the location, send a reminder, is to look for a blue button that has the text email attendees on it. It should be pretty apparent when you're on your event dashboard. But that's a super, super crucial tool for staying in touch with people you're inviting. And also, if you forget any of this, it is recapped in the toolkit that we will be sharing in just a second. And actually, you know what? If any of my friends on the back end team, although, you know what? I could be my own friend on the back end team. If anybody wants to pull the host toolkit link, we could go ahead and drop that in the chat in just a second here. In the meantime, let's go to the next slide. Oh, right. No, that's literally what's happening now. We're dropping links. They're crucial. Okay. We're going to drop the host toolkit with everything to kind of say and do for setting up an event. And next time that we meet, we're going to cover a lot of the nuts and bolts detail even more so. And then also the direct mobilize link to register your event so that you can go ahead and get started planning ASAP. I do just want to say a couple of things. We are so, so, so grateful for your patience when it comes to mobilize. So guess what? We're trying to have 100,000 events happen. Each one of those events needs to be checked through and just screened for security reasons, avoiding trolls, that kind of thing. So just give our staff team grace for the fact that, it just might take a little bit of a time for your event to get approved once you actually schedule it. And there's the link to the Community Resistance Gathering Host Toolkit whenever you're ready. Let me keep going here with what's on the slide. Yes, just to reiterate, all events will be private. And also, if you're thinking about hosting something, but you're like, why should I use Mobilize? We just want to say, like, it kind of helps us, know if we got to 1 million and just kind of stay organized and understand how this movement is building. Should you need extra support, host office hours are going to be made available once you register an event. Okay, so we're not dropping that link tonight, but if you're actually going to host an event, that'll be an option you have access to later on over the next couple weeks. Let's see what's on the next slide okay, yes. The next slide is kind of a closing moment. I don't know. Are we ready? Hey, Daniel and Ash and Maria, I just want to bring you all back on with me into the visibility of the space. Yes, let's get that going. Here we are. Okay, I think we're all visible again. I am going to take the exciting motion of turning the chat back on. Because I'm just curious to hear from folks. What are you leaving with from this call? And just want to say one more time, we're going to check your Q&A upvotes. We will recap and cover the biggest stuff next time. Daniel, Ash, Maria, what's up? Anything that's on your mind as we're kind of finishing up here?
I want to say, one, just thank you everyone for being here and joining. I've been almost every time I've given a presentation at some point, I've reminded myself of Phyllis Fong, who is the USDA Inspector General, who was the first person that I saw getting fired by Donald Trump. And she said, no, he does not have that authority or right. And so she's going to act like a free person. And so that was a signal, I think, to the rest of us about how we have to act, that Donald Trump can say what he's going to say, and we have to continue acting like free people. So that's the spirit of noncompliance that I'm entering into. I'm not complying with the voice of one who's telling me to be smaller, telling me to not love my neighbor, to not be extending myself towards others. And so, in that regard, delighted to be with all of you. And thank you for having us. And yes, just excited for what's next alongside the dread.
Yeah. Well, we can go in order. How's that, Ash?
Good.
I mean, thank you so much. Thank you to the 1 Million Rising team that's put this all together. So much effort that goes into mass calls like this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I've been trying actually the Q&A to follow as many of the questions and comments as I could. And there are so many like constructive, what about this? What about this form of non-cooperation? What about going after the enablers of ICE? What about general strike? So much energy, so much desire to do things in this group. So I'm so grateful for this. And I'm also like one thing observing that people are like, well, what about the positive alternative? And I think this is a really important thing to bear in mind as we're resisting, as we're not cooperating. Why are we doing it? Why are we not cooperating it? Because we love life, because we love our communities, because we want a society everyone can be free and flourish. So being able to articulate that positive vision of what we're fighting for is so critical to sustain the energy and momentum of our non-cooperation, of our resistance movement. So just thank you for everything that everyone is doing, and so grateful to be in the fight with you all.
My loves, you are not confused. Things are bad. And you're not confused about what you're fighting for, to Maria's point. You're fighting for your neighbors. You're fighting for your nieces and your nephews. You're fighting for your cousins. You're fighting for people that you haven't met, but who you know are being targeted by this evil administration. It's not complicated. We're fighting for very basic things like sharing this amazing planet, like being kind to one another, like making sure people belong and have what they need to survive this place, which are things like healthcare, housing, food, clean air, clean water. It's not complex, my friends. So don't let these evil people make you feel like it's rocket science to get to democracy when it's actually just finger painting. It's actually our culture. It's actually our way. And the majority of the people in this country agree with us. So let's act like the winners we are. Let's walk into the dignity of the fact that victory has been yours since the beginning. If you just make the choice to do it, I've been told we are at 4,849 pledges to host community gatherings. And y'all, you blew through the 1,000. You blew through the 1,000 almost before I could finish the sentence to get you to get to 1,000. I want us to hit 5,000 before the end of this call, and we still have 4 more minutes. We have 4 more minutes. So I see you in the chat. Y'all are literally hollering at me on every social media. Y'all using, some of y'all still using Twitter. Y'all hit me up on Twitter. I don't even really use it anymore. I see you. And if you can make the commitment, I want you to go to No Kings. I want you to go to the website. We'll drop it in the chats again for you. We need you to go to the website, and we need you to, if you're nervous, click the toolkit. I promise you everything you need is in that toolkit. So go to www.nokings.org/rise. Look at the toolkit real quick. What you'll see is that it'll have a link to the recordings of all of the 1 million Rising sessions. It's going to have a resistance gathering agenda and guide. You won't even have to make that from scratch. It'll have a checklist of things that you should do before the gathering, that you can do during the gathering, that you can do after the gathering. It'll have space for you to share all of the cool things that you learn from your gathering. We wouldn't ask you to do this if we didn't hold your hand and give you everything you needed to get through it. I promise you. Solidarity looks like that. So again, I need you to get there. I'm seeing we're at 4,950. We're almost there. Friends, y'all just broke 5,000. If you don't think that we can win, I don't know what else we can tell you tonight that might give you a little bit more hope to do it. I'm going to ask you for one more thing now that you've broken 5,000. I'm going to ask you to use the social media app of your choice. I want you to go to your listservs and your emails. I want you to go to your group chats, and I want you to tell other folks to take the pledge as well. I want you to encourage other people to come on and get active with us. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight. I want to make sure that we keep telling people to come to these trainings, that we keep sharing out the link for people to RSVP. If you RSVP, you get the recording. Y'all, we love you, and we'll see you being non-compliant out in the streets.
Thank you so much for closing us out, Ash. Everyone, we're going to leave this on 1 more minute just so folks can grab those links. We will have you recording, your slides, your links, your resources all out in the follow-up email tomorrow. Thank you all so much. Really grateful that you're here with us tonight. Daniel, Ash, Maria, thank you once again.
Thanks, everyone. Blessings.
Good night.